has always maintained our values and is committed to improving sustainable development, well-being, and equality to benefit our whole community, because we're invested in you.
Good morning, everyone. I know you're probably expecting something different. Well, let's just say that we had the pinch hit today. We have our Eastern team, our Ontario team in meetings, sales meetings. So you get the sub-ins. This is the Western team in the Prairie region. My name is John Tam, sales director for IA and looking after the Prairie region alongside Nick Flanagan. He's also on the call with me. So we will be hosting you today. Now, when it comes down to it, anytime you're in as the newbie, we have the, I guess, the disadvantage of knowing what's already gone on, but guess what? You get something new today. But just in case you are registered, I'm going to make the assumption that the replay will be sent out. So a couple of housekeeping things. Replays will be sent out, as well as CE credits will be CE credits will also be sent out by email. So those things will happen automatically. Apologies, this is the Western slide. Normally this is the Western call, but in case you want to call us after the fact, we are there. We do have our team out in BC as well, Daniel Kranza Jones and CN Chen. I think most of you are probably aware of your contacts out east. But today's topic, I mean, we're going to reintroduce a little bit in terms of IA itself. We are a key player in the Canadian industry, noticing that we're about third largest in the insurance company now by size. Over 132 years we've been in operation. We've amassed over 4 million client accounts, and during COVID we actually grew as a lot of industries shrunk. And of the 25,000 plus advisors that we deal with, we have almost half of them are World Financial Group advisors. We crossed over $205 billion assets under management and administration, and our market cap puts us as one of the largest and more stable companies in Canada. So I'm going to start with a market review just to kind of update you on what we're thinking, what's kind of happening, and our outlooks. But afterwards, we're going to dive into kind of a Seg Fund 101, and that'll be Nick's topic. However, I'm also going to go through just account types, especially in preparation of RSP season. I mean, it should be always RSP season, but people like to wait until the last moment, but probably just a nice little good review in terms of the account types available. So with that, I'm going to dive into market review. This is as of last Thursday, but looking at the close, we finally see bonds actually bounce back quite a bit in anticipation that the Federal Reserve and the Central Bank of Canada, or Bank of Canada, we're looking at possibly rate cuts, and we've already passed probably the March date. I think that was fairly optimistic. So we're probably looking into the summer, but the markets right now, as I've always mentioned, they kind of have a forward-looking view. And so things that we can anticipate, typically you're starting to see them price in 6 to 8 months early. So we started the bond market a little bit shy, and I think a lot of people were a little bit more afraid, thinking this is another downturn for bonds. However, I think the market's responding based on two levers: not only demand as people search for higher yields and a little bit more protection on the downside, but also as we anticipate rates coming down, bond prices actually go up. So it's an inverse relationship. We've also seen the equity markets kind of carry momentum forward from 2023 into this year. We can anticipate that most likely there's a mixed bag in terms of the proposed soft landing in case there is a recession. I think we've been talking about potential recession for now 5 years or 4 years ever since COVID. However, we've kind of continued to truck along. So the NASDAQ last year was the big winner. That was the U.S. technology sector that fed into the U.S. market. The S&P 500 also floated very well. And Canada was modest. And I think that's where I would say there's somewhat of a sleeping giant type of thing going on because we're underpriced versus the US. So I would just say, don't forget about Canada. You do want some exposure there. The difficult thing, and I will talk about afterwards, is Asia. They're going through their little revamp of sorts. Certainly, there's been a hit on their real estate market and real estate development, which lends to kind of a rout within their market. So I'll talk about that later. In terms of oil, we're kind of trying to figure out where the equilibrium is when it comes to a number of wars around the globe, as well as, well, the Middle East. They continue to control oil prices there. We'll find out where that settles in. But in terms of the Canadian dollar, not much change, and we'll probably see that the Canadian dollar will weaken against a very strong US dollar still, and gold is kind of still holding steady at 2,000. So with that in mind, we just kind of want to look at a recap of last year. So I already mentioned tech was certainly the big story of last year. One of the things about AI, when it started to come into the everybody's mind when it comes to, well, this is suddenly going to make our life easier. Artificial intelligence will probably take over things. So the hype around it certainly drove this rebound. No one really expected the NASDAQ to bounce that far, and therefore also the US market. But we almost have to be careful how narrow that rebound was. And so even though we're yet to understand monetarily how AI will affect businesses, we can certainly see there's a lot of money spent, a lot of research and development that's happening within the space. So if we really look at the S&P 500, the largest 500 companies in the States, towards December, it was up about 22%. We can see the Magnificent Seven. Those are the 7 companies that are widely connected to AI and its rise. So you have your names like Amazon, Alphabet, Tesla, NVIDIA, Microsoft. So these are the companies collectively that hit 70% year over year return just with those 7 names. So therefore, if you actually strip out those 7, the 493 that are left over, it was actually only up 9%. And so you got to see the effect of not only technology, but focused amount of technology companies too. So we just got to be careful that what is the chances that you're going to replicate that type of return from last year into this? I'm not saying it's over, but you certainly want to make sure to diversify. Canadian inflation, even though we've seen it come down dramatically, we still saw towards the end of the year a slight little ramp up. So this causes a little bit of anticipation that we might see rates still continue to be somewhat high for now, but we want to make sure that's controlled. We certainly want to get back to the targets that central banks want, around 2.5% to 3%. So the forecast certainly didn't hit where most consensus would have thought by the end of 2023. That being said, we have a new year. We're probably anticipating that inflation in a lot of categories has been controlled. So they're still targeting around that 2.5% inflation year over year by the end of this year, which is probably a good sign that we're still healthily moving along, but we're not seeing these price gouges that we've seen in the last 2 years. So that leads to the Bank of Canada. They talked, they discussed, and most likely they're going to hold through March, most likely into the summer. So there's a clear consensus to maintain for now, but the discussions are, well, how do we shift it going forward? We think it's already restrictive enough. We've seen aspects of wage growth start to curve the other way. Companies, they've actually cut a lot of labor or done hiring freezes. So perhaps we're starting to see that the signs are clear that at some point we can start to move that rate down. And the consensus is also leading down south as well. So it's most likely not a March rate cut. However, everybody has their crystal ball trying to figure this out. But likely we're going to see into the summer, they're going to start to see some rate cuts. So this is just anticipating how many rate cuts there will be. We've already passed through the March one, so the market's kind of priced that in already. We saw a little bit of volatility at the beginning of the year, thinking that it won't happen. But towards really summer and beyond, we're trying to figure out, well, is it going to be 2, 3, 4 cuts perhaps? And so this is really just showcasing what are the opportunities or the chances that that will happen. The net change, really when it comes to looking at the economy itself. So to the surprise of many, we've already seen a ramp up in the US of employment. So new jobs coming up. People obviously want to get back to work. And we're starting to anticipate also that even though wage growth hasn't gone up dramatically like last year, we saw it kind of come back down, level off. Most likely we've seen some controls around that area, but if people are getting back to work, they're less dependent on government's assistance. So this might be a good sign that the economy is starting to improve. I talked about China. This is one of those situations where China was almost deemed to, because of its population and its move from kind of rural to urban, the populations were moving to cities and getting jobs, that at some point the middle class would certainly expand, and the consumption based on that would take China beyond where the US is. However, because of their one-child policy and some restrictions on family planning, this has now led to their population is getting older before it actually got bigger. And so we're seeing this crossover point of the demographics. And now, most likely, we're not going to see China actually pick up beyond number 2. There's still going to be a large economy, but here's where the market itself, it also had a pretty big rout. And this is anticipating, well, not only is real estate kind of devaluing right now, there certainly were a couple of real estate developers that went through bankruptcy proceedings and the government had to step in. They're also trying to ramp up quantitative easing, as we would call it, but basically injecting capital back into their economy in order to get it stimulated. So this is one of those we're definitely waiting and seeing. On the outskirts, there are certainly opportunities, but this is one of those things where we're going to keep a close eye on. And even though we do see markets are reacting to, or people are reacting to the markets, and the sentiment overall is optimism, but it's also become somewhat disconnected from what we call macro fundamentals. So are companies actually growing? Here's where on the front end, PMI is the Purchase Managers Index, which means on the front end of companies, perhaps manufacturing goods or services, are they spending the money? Well, they kind of are. And we do see that it's starting to come back up slightly, but certainly when it comes to the ratios of global stocks and bonds, which means if it's higher, people are more pushing towards equities. So the risk appetite is high, but that has to be followed by companies actually growing. So right now there's still a disconnect. So we got to make sure that are we buying into companies when they are starting to ramp up and there's a catalyst for growth. So we don't want to. That's why you have active managers. They're looking at the situation. There's certainly areas they want to find opportunity in, but it's not quite pulled together in terms of the opportunity. And just finally, the bond market. This has been kind of a major hit, especially when it came to 2021 into 2022. We'd normally see bonds kind of react differently than stocks. However, in this case, especially in 2022, they reacted the same way. So in anticipation of perhaps a market downturn, that we saw a big sell-off in the equity markets. Normally, bonds would actually support a protective aspect of that. But bonds, because interest rates went up so far, so quick, it actually did the opposite. And so here's where we want to make sure that going forward, people understand that as rates start to come down and demand starts to increase, bonds actually look good. So this is more of a reminder as you're doing reviews of your clients, perhaps they were balanced clients before, and we saw bonds, we kind of went away from them knowing that they were falling underground, let's say, in terms of their yields and their returns. So people kind of moved into equity exposure, and some of them may be outside the risk tolerance. So it's just a gentle reminder that bonds are actually slated to be good. So maybe it's time to do a review and put people back into them. I noticed there was there's some comments. I didn't mention that if there is any questions, please reach out through the Q&A side. It just keeps things a little bit more organized. So if you can use the Q&A section, Nick's going to answer that. And I'll do the same in return. So as we dive into the investment account types, it's just to kind of preface before we talk about, some of the major concepts, what are the practical accounts that you can go into? Now, we do have a promotion going on. So here's where you might see some billboards, you might see some impressions, but the whole idea is that in case it's RSP season, so I might as well leverage the ideas around it. We want to make some of these dreams happen. People have these things on top of their mind, or if they don't, it's your obligation to maybe pull it out of them. Because if they don't start investing, then some of these things don't happen. So the TFSA, right now, deposits going into TFSAs and RSPs, there's a $5,000 prize at the end of February. So if you can get deposits in, you get a ballot in, perhaps you can win a $5,000 prize. And that's for your clients, by the way. So a TFSA we'll start with. This is a tax-free savings account. The banks were pretty good at lobbying how to name this, because when we think about savings accounts, where do you think people go? To the bank. And so a lot of people just assume these are, like it says, savings accounts, low returns, and more of a short-term money in, short-term money out. But you can certainly still plan for the long term. This is a tax-sheltered vehicle where you have tax-free growth, investments going in or contributions. They don't receive a tax deduction. However, as they grow tax-free, and then upon withdrawal, it is also tax-free. So it's actually a great thing that happened back in 2009 when they were launched. It gave Canadians the opportunity to actually have a tax-free savings vehicle. Requirements: valid social insurance number, have to be 19 in BC, 18 for most of other Canada. Even though the room is opened up for BC, you have to wait 1 year until you're 19. And of course, you have to be a resident. So counting 2009 all the way to today, if you haven't actually put any money in, then your total deposit room is 95,000. And so as long as you were 18 back then and you're eligible the whole time, you have quite a bit of room in order to save and invest. You can always find clients, if they log into their CRA My account, they'll find what their contributions rooms are, not only for TFSAs, but also RSP room. And keep in mind, if you can get familiar with our EVIL application, setting up these accounts, probably 10 minutes or less. And so once you get familiar with that, it's pretty great. And then access, you have full shelf of Seg Fund, which is totaling now 87 or more. GIFs, our version of GICs, and also the high interest savings account. So who should open one up? I would say anybody. Here's where you have a savings vehicle that can accommodate the short term as well as the long term. And you want people to think about it in that way too. Maybe you've used up all your RSP room and you need another savings vehicle. You have some non-registered savings that you may want to move into this this account because it's growing tax-free and withdrawals are tax-free. Or maybe you're a retiree that has some extra that I haven't spent that I also want to put in. So whatever the reason, this is certainly a good vehicle that you want to get into. RSPs, this is something that launched back in the 50s. Great thing about this is contributions going in, tax deduction, so therefore a potential tax refund. The annual contribution is based on your previous year's income, which means if you haven't worked a year and you haven't filed taxes, then you won't have that room. So even new immigrants coming in or those on a work permit, you at least have to log a year of work and income received in order to have RSP room. Now, the annual contribution limit continues to go up each year. It's 18% of the previous year's income, up to last year was a maximum of $31,500. Contributions would lower your income, therefore potentially a tax refund. And the same requirements exist as with the TFSA. Two key advantages, I already mentioned contribution limit. Up to the contribution limit, your contributions are tax deductible, and you don't pay tax on your money as it grows. So you only pay tax as it comes out. At that point, it is counted as income. The RSP deadline this year, March 1st. So just make sure you're getting in all of those deposits before then. Don't wait till the last moment, but remind people it is coming up quick, so you perhaps should get those deposits in. And then in case you've exhausted those two registered accounts, there is a non-registered, which simply means it's an open account or a cash account. Some of those terms are synonymous, but here's where it's basically not registered. So this is where there's no contribution limit. Investments are subject to full taxation, simply meaning that as the money grows, whether it be income or dividends from stocks, those will be counted as income or growth for the year. So you do have tax slips that will come out. You have to accommodate those and pay for taxation as it comes in. Even if you haven't taken money out, you do have to prepay those taxes. But what it does is move up your adjusted cost base or your book cost, which means you've already prepaid for that growth. So in case it does grow beyond that, you've already paid for that. So when it comes out, that portion is accommodated. And then you have capital gains, which if it's growing in a stock, fantastic. It's more tax advantage because it's only half the tax. Do mention that there are additional FINTRAC and anti-money laundering verifications. You do have some additional regulatory forms, and all of this can also be completed online through EVO Savings. I do want to mention FHSA. I mean, it was the talk of all last year into this year as well. There's a lot of people wanting to, well, find some money to put aside to eventually buy a home. Any help is great. So we launched a contest around this as well back in October. As long as you registered and wanted to take a look at it, there was one ballot. Then you open up the account, there's also another ballot. So it's an $8,000 prize towards that. By November 13th, we could open contracts. By December 11th, you can now put in contributions. Right now, it's just the high interest savings account. And all the way up until March 11th, that will be the case. But by March 11th, we'll allow all investment options within our SEG lineup. So what is it exactly? We've talked about an RSP. We talked about a TFSA. If they got together, got married, had a kid, this would be your FHSA. So contributions in, they are tax deductible like a RSP. And then towards the purchase of a first home is a tax-free withdrawal like a TFSA. And so this allows you to now accumulate tax-free and withdraw tax-free towards that first home purchase. So what does that mean to be an eligible FHSA holder? So Canadian resident, legal age, so 18 or 19, and then must be under 71. The primary thing you can use as a litmus test is, have you lived in a home that you own for the last 4 years? If you haven't, then you can open up this account. So if you own a rental that you don't live in and you actually rent yourself, do you qualify? Yes. So that's the big definition is, have you lived in a house that you own or that your spouse owns? So if you are married to someone, they own the home that you live in, then you are not eligible. So just keep that in mind when it comes to eligibility. Now, when it comes to contribution deadline, it's unlike an RSP where you have the first 60 days of this year to put in contributions that would count towards tax year 2023. So in this case, when it comes to FHSA, deposits must go in by December 31st to be counted as a contribution towards tax deductibility in the tax year that you want to use it in. So we've already passed it. Contributions in 2023 would count towards that tax year. This year now, all contributions would count towards tax year 2024. Contribution room is released the moment that you open one up. So it's $8,000 to start. So some of you opened one up last year, you would have had that 8,000, and you merely have to open it up. You didn't have to put any deposits in, which means that you actually carry forward that 8,000 from last year into this year. But the big thing is you must use it up, because from year to year, even though the government is giving you an extra 8,000, you can only carry forward 8,000 unused room, which means if you can continue to do this, if you don't use those 8,000s by the next year, you will then actually lose that room. So use it or lose it, but it comes down to you can carry forward 8,000 each year going forward only. So as it breaks down, we kind of see all these options now when it comes to buying a home. So if it's your first home purchase, FHSA certainly is primarily designed for that. Secondarily, this can, if you don't use it, get added to your RSP. You don't need the RSP room. You simply you need to transfer it over. RSP's primary, you want to save for retirement. However, the home buyer's plan still exists. That can be combined with the FHSA towards that first home purchase. And TFSAs, because of the tax-free nature, it's also a great thing if you absolutely need to dip into that in order to buy that first home. There is a calculator available just so they can showcase or make a proposal to clients. And there's that $8,000 you can win. So if you want to just get that ballot in, get some of these accounts set up. Deductions, even though you may not need the deduction this year. So you might have some young people, they don't really need to use the tax deduction because they're lower income now. You don't have to actually claim the deduction in the year that you put it in. You can carry these forward until age 71. So they can basically carry these forward indefinitely until such time their income might be actually higher and they can benefit from these tax deductions. As well as there's a maximum participation period of 15 years. So if you don't buy that house within that 15 years since you opened it, then this will have to be closed and transferred into that RSP. There's no tax that happens upon that transfer. And also, when you purchase your property, it's a one and done. So the moment that you use it, ideally you would use it all. And at that point, the account will be closed. You can no longer purchase another one. As well, if for some reason you didn't use all of the proceeds towards that first home purchase, then it must be closed the following year. A lot of this information comes from a site that we've dedicated to FHSAs, and the 10 questions on this site, on that link, that'll actually take you to most of what you want, most of the questions that people ask when it comes to the FHSA itself. I'll quickly point to some of our investment calculators that are available. If you go under tools and applications, click on financial calculators. These are just ways that you can build that story for people, right? So we talk about our financial independence number. We also talk about, well, as compound interest happens or compound growth happens, what does that actually look like if you have a certain amount that you're investing now and you're dropping in a monthly contribution? So let's say we're starting with 10,000, we have $200 a month that we can afford to put in. I'm anticipating buying a car, so that's why those amounts aren't as robust. But provided we did this, 6% average rate of return, let's just say conservatively, then 35 years later, we can expect about 350,000. Not bad, right? But what if I held off and I didn't buy that car? I decided to invest it now, and maybe as I improve my income over the next 3 years, 4 years, then I'll start putting it in then, or I still probably buy that car then. So now I can drop in 30 grand and I'll put in $500 a month. Well, that suddenly now moves this up closer to $1 million. So you got to think time is on your side, especially if you're young. You want to get people started as young as they can and showcase these numbers, saying as long as you get started early, this is the effect on the back end. Another good one is the contribution calculator, as well as the tax brackets, or finding out what your tax bracket is. So we have some of those calculators in. We have a BC example here, but also to showcase that, let's say they make 45,000 now, they have a contribution of $5,000 towards their RSP. So maybe they're still, lower income. Some of these people might be still living at home, so they're saving more as they go. Well, your average marginal tax rate is actually pretty low. So your tax savings is about $1,100. But if you make more eventually, and you actually can save more, even though in this case they tripled the amount of RSP contribution, your tax saving is more than triple. Why? Because they're in a higher tax bracket. Average tax is actually higher, so you get more back. So the effect of that tax refund or that tax as a consequence of the contribution can be pretty great. And the last one I'll show you is the investment postponement, because a lot of times people say, oh, not right now. I have other priorities. I want to go on this trip. I want to, buy a car right away. Well, this is the effect of waiting. So I'm giving you the same example, that 30,000 that was invested at $500 a month extra going in with 35 years out, 6%. So that leads you to that 920,000. But what if we waited 3 years before we started? That actually now you've lost 3 years of growth. It's amazing on the end of that cycle how dramatic that can be. You're now down but 140,000. It's like, wait, I just waited 3 years. How do I lose 140,000? It's because of that extra 3 years of compounding. And so in order to just catch up then, instead of $500 a month, we got to put in 613, which is an extra 25,000 just by taking those 3 years off. And so this might be one of those things where you can say, look, if the cost of waiting is pretty high, at some point, you may want to consider that getting started now pays dividends later on. So with that, hopefully I've set things up enough so that for Nick, he can provide some concepts for you and end off with some practical tips as well. So Nick, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you very much, John. As mentioned, just for the tail end of today's webinar, we just wanted to go over a couple of napkin presentations that you can do with both your clients and any new recruits to kind of get their head wrapped around the topic of investing, what questions to ask, what value they can provide with active management, and then some of the value that seg funds could provide before finally just finishing on a few different value adds we have for you, so to speak. So as we dive in, how often does this question come up, especially when you bring up the fact that you work in investments, right? They go, oh, okay, fantastic. What kind of rate of return can you get me? Or what kind of rate of interest, right? And not to say that's not a fair question, it absolutely is, but is it the right question right now, right? Because if we're just talking about investments, really there's a whole bunch of different questions out there, right? The how and what questions. How are your fees? What are the returns? What are the products? How are your guarantees and things like that, right? But if we back it up for a minute, and I no longer work at IA, I'm opening up Nick's travel agency, and you come and sit down in front of me. What's the first question I'm going to ask? Well, where do you want to go, right? Well, if you say, well, Nick, that's not important. Just how much will it cost to get there? Well, I have no idea, right? Depending on where you want to go, it might be $100, might be 1,000. No clue, because that's kind of like ask about fees. Or, well, how fast will I get there? That's kind of like ask about returns, right? If we don't know what the destination is, that's kind of an unknown. And really, all of these things are me trying to sell to you. If I'm just trying to answer questions like this, I'm really just trying to sell you a product at the end of the day. Versus if I want you to buy from me, I need to spur some curiosity in the conversation there, right? So just like if we're going to figure out that destination for the travel agent, in the financial world, that is your financial objective. What is the reason? What is the purpose of this money? What are we wanting to work towards, right? And this could be anything out there. There's a new car, travel, wedding, house, retirement, kids' education, whatever it may be. There's always a goal or objective we're generally trying to get to, right? We have savvy savers, but many of us just don't save because it's fun, right? There is something we're generally working towards. So if you're saying, okay, well, what are we making the money for? The harder question a lot of people have never actually thought about is, well, how much do you actually need? Well, for a car, that might be kind of easy, right? We can search up the fair market value of it, kind of find what we would need for that. But for larger goals, that gets to be a harder question to answer, right? Especially when we start thinking about probably the hardest one people will try and attain being retirement, right? When you say, how much do you need for retirement? People give you just a big number, generally $1 million because it's nice round off the top of their head. But is that actually what you need, or is that your best guess, right? Because if we talk about your average Canadian, age 40, starting to think about retirement on the horizon there, well, that gives us a bit of a time horizon right off the bat, right? About 25 years. And they understand what their money buys them today, right? Because it's always hard to think about what the future will look like. But if you understand what your lifestyle looks like today, you can simply ask, well, in retirement, would you want your lifestyle to be equal, better, or worse? Well, I would hope for at least equal, if not better, but definitely not worse, right? So if they take home $75,000 today, they understand what that buys them, right? How many meals out per week, how many rounds of golf in the summer, trips in the winter, whatever it may be. But as John was talking about, there's this nasty thing called inflation, likes to eat away at our money, right? And so if we've done a great job, we've probably already presented the rule of 72. And so if we use that kind of normal average we're in right now of around 3%, we see that the doubling period at that current rate of inflation is around 24 years, lines up very closely with his time to retirement. So that $75,000 that they enjoy today will not cost the same in the future, that lifestyle, right? That will cost $150,000. And that's not for 3 extra trips a year, 2 extra cruises, anything like that. That's the same lifestyle that they know and enjoy. So if we're going to have a lifestyle cost of $150,000, well, what is the asset base that we would actually need to harvest off of that, right? Well, if we're going to try and take 10% growth off of it per year, well, then we need an asset base of $1.5 million. Well, also 10% is a pretty lofty goal to hit, especially in retirement. So maybe we go with a little bit more conservative 5%. Well, now we need an asset base of $3 million. So, Mr. and Mrs. Client, do you have a plan to get you to 1.5, let alone 3? If not, I think we need to have another conversation here, right? And now, once we work in a risk tolerance and using some of those financial calculators that John talked about, we see that if they had no money saved today at that 10% rate of return over the 25 years to hit just the lower goal of 1.5 million, they need to start saving $1,200 a month today. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know too many people that take home $75,000 that just have an extra 1,200 to start putting away monthly. So maybe there was some sort of business opportunity that could help stem that cash flow gap, but I'll leave that up to you. Now, the other thing I'll ask is, as I went through that very quick napkin presentation, how often did your mind drift to the left side of the page? Because now that we have a bit of the goalpost set, we can start talking about what products might be right for you, what guarantees might fit into that plan, what fees may work with some of the funds, right? Now we can get to specifics because we've worked on the actual objective and goal first. So now you say, all right, Nick, I agree. Maybe we should actually build out a bit of a proper plan here, but why use a fund manager, right? Why actually use that? I know some people, they download an app on their phone, seems pretty simple. Why actually use a proper fund manager? Well, and that's fair. I mean, generally the market does trend upwards and to the right. In this example here, we have the Canadian market from the turn of the millennium there to around 2017. And yeah, if you just sat there with the Canadian market, it did go up over time. But as we see, though, that is nowhere near a straight line, right? There's a lot of up and down, a lot of volatility naturally baked in there. So, as an avid investor, you might be able to understand the game that you're playing and say, yeah, okay, at negative 22 or even negative 49, I am comfortable with this because I understand that. But for many investors, they are emotional with their money, right? And so when they see a negative 46 or a negative 49, they normally sell out and make unfit decisions for themselves because they're acting emotionally. Whereas active management kind of takes that ball out of your hands, right? Because really, if we're just trying to buy something and hold it for a long time, that's just passive, right? We're being a passive investor. And this is generally what we see with ETFs, right? Is ETFs buy a portion of the market or a certain sector or an industry, good, bad, and ugly of the funds, sorry, not funds, of the companies or positions that are available within that certain mantra, right? And so if you are just buying them to hold and hope that they go up in value, is that actually the best use of your money, right? Because as we just went through the holiday season there, many of us really like the Christmas oranges, right? Those box of oranges you can get at the markets. And normally, if you're going to go buy one, you want to peek open and look under the lid, see what's in there, right? Well, buying a passive fund or an ETF generally is like buying that box of oranges and not being able to peek underneath it. You're buying what's in there, good, bad, and ugly. Whereas having an active manager, right? Someone, or there's a professional or a team of professionals like partnering with IA, they are going to go, you're going to hand over that box to them and they'll go through it for you and look at every orange individually and go, that one's got some bruises. This one not as sweet as we're wanting, and swap it out for something better. Because really, what you want for both yourselves as advisors to make your lives easier, but especially for your clients, is not only growth, but a pleasant experience as we go through it, right? Because if I can analogize it a different way for you here, and living in Alberta here, it's great. I was born and raised, but we just went through minus 40 a few weeks ago. And so if I was going to retire, I don't know if this would be the spot. Maybe somewhere a little sunnier, a little warmer, right? And so if I had to move somewhere and I was going to pick where I'm going to move to, but the one stipulation is wherever I pick, I have to stay for the next 20 years. Well, I better make sure my decision is worthwhile, right? So we're going to look at City 1 and City 2 here. So City 1 has an average of 25. City 2 has an average of 18 degrees per year. So based on that, where do you think I should move? If you said City 1, I don't blame you. Seems to be a little nicer, right? So you have to remember, though, to get to an average, you got to go through a high and a low. So the first city has a variance of 47 degrees. The other only has a variance of 15 degrees. So in City 1, my furnace and AC better be working all year round, right? Versus the other one, not so much swing there. Now, these are actually real places. One is Death Valley, California, and the other is San Diego. So now when we're talking about not only volatility, but price as well, just like the conversation with ETFs and fees and things like that, where do you think it will be cheaper for me to live? Well, probably Death Valley, right? I can buy a lot of land for not too much. But why? Because a lot of people won't actually enjoy where they want to stay, right? Versus San Diego, one of the world's most temperate cities worldwide, it will cost a little bit more to stay there, but overall, I will enjoy the experience more. Especially when we think about that one stipulation of wherever I'm going to move, I have to stay for the next 20 years. Where am I more likely to actually stick it out, right? Because again, at the end of the day, like I said, we want investing to be an enjoyable experience for people, not somewhere that you see your money go through a lot of volatility, get scared and pull out. Because your biggest advantage at the end of the day is time in the market and allowing that money to grow, right? So just buying based on fees or volatility right away may end up impacting you negatively. So, all right, Nick, maybe I should actually use professional, not just a simple ETF or something like that. Why not do it at the bank? I do everything at the bank, right? I go see my teller, deposit checks, nice guy. Why not just do it there? It's convenient. Well, that's fair, but let's talk about what you're actually going to be purchasing from the bank if you go only there. Because if I only go and see the teller, the only things he can sell me are GICs and bonds, right? Those term and locked in products. Now, people like those because there's guarantees generally, right? I can invest X today and I get Y back tomorrow. Not a lot of calculation involved on that. Pretty simple, all in all. But there are disadvantages to it too, right? There's low returns generally, even in the high interest rate environment we're in. If I get 4% back on a bond, but inflation is 3%, really I only netted out 1% on the end of the year there, right? It's locked in depending on how the contract is written. I may have to pay fees to get out of it if I can get out of it at all, right? I may have to wait until the term is fully ended for that. And then because it is interest income at the end of the day in a non-registered plan, it is 100% taxable, right? Now, maybe those don't interest me so much, so they walk me down a little bit further and take me to their advisor's office in the bank there, where they'll talk either about stocks or more likely mutual funds, right? Everybody knows the sheet the bank has of give me your risk tolerance and I will give you one of 5 funds depending on that, right? Not too fantastic or exotic or anything like that, but pretty run of the mill for your everyday Canadian to see. Well, there are certain advantages to these products, right? You potentially get higher returns. These are market linked after all. And so you can get some growth on that. They're liquid and not locked in. So I can place a trade order and have the money in my account 2 to 3 business days later. And as John was talking about with the taxation in a non-registered account with capital gains or dividends, I'm guaranteed at least 50% taxation, if not 33, right, with dividends. But these are not guaranteed at the end of the day, right? They are market linked. And so there is a natural bit of risk baked in there. But what if we had a product that could take the advantages we like from the one side and the guarantees from the other? Well, that's what a seg fund is at the end of the day, is it's a mutual fund wrapped in an insurance wrapper, which gives it certain extra benefits. And some of those benefits really come into their own when you pass away. Because if you did a great job managing your money overall while you were alive, you're going to have something called an estate. And that's everything you see lumped in there: mutual fund, stocks, GICs, bonds, property, and bank account. Now, once that estate is triggered, it has to go to this thing called probate. Now, forgive me, as mentioned, we are from the west side, so these numbers are a little bit more on the west coast of things. But the provincial taxes generally out here, I always say if you're going to die anywhere, die in Alberta. It's the cheapest. It's only $500 compared to other provinces like BC. They do it on a percentage basis. So if you have $1 million estate, the province will take 14 grand of that in BC. Maybe not ideal, right? Now, you have to remember, it's not just a money issue, it's a bit of a time issue as well, because just to get to the start of probate in most provinces is around 3 to 6 months. Now, you still have to pay the final taxes on the estate. If there's a debit or creditor, they may get their kick at it. If it's a contested will, there may need lawyers to get involved before finally, after that entire process, it goes to the beneficiaries. Now, how long do you think that process took? If just to get to the start of probate was 3 to 6 months. Well, would it shock you to see that it's probably a minimum of a year in most provinces? And depending on the backlog, it can run as long as 2 years. And you have to remember, this is locked all of those funds up. This may be at a time those family needs access to that capital, if it was the breadwinner of the family who passed away, right? And so this can be a very tedious and stressful time for that family. Versus a seg fund, because of that insurance wrapper around it, once we have our death claim form and a notarized death certificate, we can have a check in that family's hand in 1 to 2 weeks. That's the difference of 1 to 2 weeks versus 1 to 2 years. Now, it's good if we can save you time. It's even better if we can save you money. And so on this example here, this is in Ontario, we have a non-registered fund where the client was able to grow both a mutual fund and a seg fund before they passed away. Now you see the mutual fund actually had more value in it at time of death, right? 213 to 209. But by the time probate fees, professional fees, executor fees, redemption fees, it's got substantially less at only 195,000 going to the family. And again, that mutual fund had to go through that entire probate process and may not get to them for upwards of a year and a bit. Whereas the seg fund, even having more in it now, goes directly to that family as a check in 1 to 2 weeks. So seg funds really are beneficial when it is the estate planning part of things and passing that money on in a tax efficient and time efficient manner. Now, in our seg fund lineup, we are proud to have one of the most extensive shelves in the industry. About half of our 87 funds are managed in-house by IA Clarington, our mutual fund division, but we're also not naive enough to think we're the best at everything. And so we're very proud of the lineup and partnerships in our lineup that we've been able to form so far. Some of you may recognize a lot of the names on there, like the world's largest money managers, BlackRock and Fidelity. I know I was just knocking the banks, but we do actually have some bank-owned product to some degree. Dynamic is actually owned by Scotia. Renaissance is owned by CIBC. PIMCO is one of the world's largest bond managers, and we're very proud to have them in our fixed income space. And then as a retail client through IA, you actually get access to some institutional level managers that you wouldn't have access to as a normal everyday Canadian. So a Jarislowsky Fraser, a Wellington Square, a Loomis Sales, pardon me. These manage normally large pensions or institutional, like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation type money. And so it's access to those type of managers that is really an important thing to have. But we also have some local grown product as well. So those of you who have been out to Vancouver may be familiar with Van City. They manage our SRI, so our socially responsible investing, and ESG, ethical, social, and governance funds, really looking into the green and clean investing space. And then out of Calgary, we have the QV investing group, who really focuses on the Canadian equity space. So again, we're very, very proud of the lineup we have. We really have everything for every type of client. There isn't anything that if a client is looking for that we don't have, unless it's a very specialty thing like a precious metal fund or anything like that. As John was talking about with our application software, you can get an application done in around 10 minutes. And we try and be as repeatable and scalable for your business. We know that you guys are training lots of people on a regular basis. And so we want to make it as easy and simple a process for you to get new people into the industry for. I won't go through all of our funds today, but if I had to pare it down to kind of a core four, or when I'm presenting, I like to call them mix picks because it just rolls off the tongue nice. But if we start in the middle there with our two flagship balance funds, normally we pair up the strategic income, that's our flagship Canadian balance fund focusing on the Canadian space, with our global diversified by Loomis Sales, one of the best performing global balance funds out there. I think it actually led the global balance category last year across all funds in the industry. If you have somebody that's a little bit more conservative, we would work in something like Global Fixed Income by PIMCO, one of the world's largest bond funds, managing over 2 trillion, yes, trillion with a T, dollars in assets under management. And then if they're a little bit more growth orientated or wanting to be aggressive, working in something like the Fidelity Global Concentrated Equity Fund. This is a very great fund we're proud to have in our lineup through Fidelity, and really focuses on the global value space in companies that are out there. So again, pairing up the 4 funds here, but just know we have a very, very extensive lineup of over 80 funds currently. Lastly, just on the tail end of today's presentation, we again appreciate you for sticking with us so far. We just want to go through some of the value adds we have for both you as agents and for your clients to make doing business just a little bit easier. So the first one is our high interest savings account. Really, the naming people didn't help us here. It should be called the high interest savings fund because this can sit inside of any of the account types that John talked about earlier. So you could have this inside of a TFSA, inside of an RSP, inside of an FHSA, as right now that is the current offering inside of that. So right now it does pay 4.45 on an annual basis. That rate does change with the Bank of Canada rate. So as John was talking about those potential rate cuts coming later in the year, the high interest savings fund will move with that. But we do prorate that and pay it out monthly. So if they stay in for the full month, they will get 1/12 of that rate paid out to the account. The nice part about and a little extra you get with this versus the bank, not only a high interest rate, but you also get some seg fund type benefits where that ability to skip probate and estate still happens with the high interest savings account as well. Not to mention, you get that through our GIFs as well. So they are called GIFs, not GICs for a specific reason, and that is for it, right? Your normal GIC is that classic term product that may be locked in for 1, 2, 5 years, whatever the term, and you will get that interest rate. We do have that same term product here, but the extra benefit is, again, you do get beneficiary designation, meaning it will skip that probate and estate process. If you are interested, please feel free to reach out to us. The rates do change on a fairly regular basis, but can be found online for the most up-to-date ones. On the client side of things, if you go just to ia.ca, this is where I like to start a lot of the trainings, as most people, it's a pretty simple one we can all get to. What you see in photo number 1 there is actually the masthead from just that ia.ca website. So if you go to the top right-hand corner under Connect is where you can find the My Client space or the Advisor Center for yourself if you got a little lost. But under that My Client space, they can either sign in if they've been there before or register if they're a first timer. To register, they just confirm a few personal details, but either way, once they sign in or register, they get access to everything you see on the the left-hand side there, which could be the contract specifications, the rates of return, transaction history, all the things they want to ask you about at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. Most of those can actually be found right here. Especially during RSP and TFSA season, though, they can actually make a contribution right from here as well. So if they hit that contribute button, they go into the second set of photos you see where they set up what type of contribution it is and how the funds, where they want the funds to be invested into, either the funds that are currently in the contract or the high interest savings account. Now, if you thought that functionality was pretty good, imagine having all of that right in the palm of your hand. So with our IA mobile app, they get access to everything I just showcased there, including the ability to make contributions. And really for you as an agent, that is very helpful because for any contributions made through either the desktop version or the mobile version, you get compensated as if you wrote the business yourself, but there's no paperwork needed because it is a client-initiated contribution. So if you don't want to have to spend an hour in the snow driving to go and get a form signed, just give your clients a call, let them know about the app and that they can make contributions right from there. As far as the Advisor Center goes, I am hoping this looks fairly familiar to most of you as this is your Advisor Center after you have logged in. If we follow that Evo tab, it'll take us to the simplified savings. That really is our home base as far as investments with IA goes. Because right from here, we can do a number of things. Under that illustration box is where you'll find not only our RESP and For Life illustration tools, but as John talked about, all of the financial calculators that we do have. You can start a new contract from here, and for clients that, have that 75-100 contract, they can do the reset right from here as well. So for the 75-100, just as a reminder, for any clients that have that annual reset feature, it is automatic, but you do have to go and set it up the first time. So this is where you can go and set that up. You can search up clients from here as well. So if we search up Mr. John Kelly in this example, you can see that we can do a number of things from the advisor side, again, including adding a contribution to either the RSP or the TFSA. We do plan to add more accounts to that contribution function in the future, but right now it is limited to just those two account types. Lastly, again, you can go into a new contract, but I just pause here for a second to bring your attention to the two buttons on the right-hand side. The first being incomplete transactions. That's for where I started an application, but maybe the laptop died. I was just trying to pre-fill before the meeting, whatever the case may be. If I haven't submitted it yet, I can go back in there, find the application I was working on, and it will actually take me right back to where I left off. If I have submitted it though, and I'm just wondering where things are at, is there extra documents needed, I can go to transaction follow-up and go through it there. So just two buttons that are quite helpful to know. But once we dive into a new contract, just to save you some extra time, we do have a client search feature as well. So maybe with John, he did an RSP with me, now he wants a TFSA. I can search it in and it will pre-fill all the information we have on file. You do still have to verify it just to make sure it's all up to date and still correct, but it just saves you a few extra minutes to type in it all in. If anybody is social media savvy, we do have the ability to actually go and co-brand a large catalog of articles that we have pre-written. So if you go to the web-showcase.ia.ca, you can actually go in and co-brand all of these articles with your own advisor information and then share them to any of the social media platforms that you use. And just to speak to the strength of the partnership between IA and WFG, we have actually gone in and made sure that all of the articles on here are already approved by WFG compliance. So you don't have to worry if you share any of these articles out that you would get in trouble. No issue. It's already been approved by your own compliance department. Lastly, just to finish off, we always love to feature our comparison service. This is a service that we have complimentary for WFG advisors, where maybe you presented a few of the topics that I went over today and they go, oh, well, Nick, that's all well and good, but I'm invested somewhere already. Well, A, that's wonderful that they're working towards their financial goals, but B, if they could get a bit of a second opinion on those, wouldn't that be worthwhile? Well, that's exactly what we showcase here. So if you'll see in this example, we have some pretty generic funds from RBC run against a few of the funds that I talked about today. And over the past 10 years, then the line graph towards the bottom, you see that both would have made money. Again, they both go upwards and to the right. That's awesome. But over those 10 years with IA, you would have made an extra $2,000. Now that's not bad on its own, but when you are working with an account that might be not 10 grand, but maybe $100,000 pension, really that could be the extra profit of $20,000. So I get you like your guy at RBC, but is he worth 20 grand to you? Maybe not, right? If that's the case, maybe IA might be a better fit. Now, lower down, we try and improve when we create these, we call them apples to apples, and we can do that with the pie graphs in the middle there. Where RBC being on the right-hand side, IA being on the left, we as closely try and match your current or your client's current fixed income to equity ratio. That way we can say that the risk tolerance is the same, and if possible, the geographic allocation, the Canada to US to global mix. That way we can say, hey, with no thumb on the scale, here's what you could have at IA versus what you have now. To get one of these done, you simply just need to send a statement, or at least at very minimum, the fund holdings that they have and kind of how much weighting is in each one. And you can send that to anybody on our investment sales team here, and we'd be more than happy to get it done for you. We do just ask for around a 2 business day turnaround time just for the volume of requests that we do get. Beyond that, though, we thank you very much for spending some time with John and I this morning. I know these probably weren't the faces you were expecting to see, but it's always nice to be able to reach out and train some people on the far side of the country that we don't get to reach out to as much. So again, we thank you very much for spending some time with us this morning. Feel free to reach out if ever needed, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.